What our company does is a consumer comes to us, they tell us their personal information. They tell us where they live, they tell us what their email address is, their phone number, who they're related to. They give us the details that a lot of people hold somewhat sensitive. What we do is we go out and we crawl the entire internet looking for any instance where a website or a database has that information and is exposing it publicly. And if we find it, we work with our member to remove it from the website or from the database. And the way we do this is somewhat magical. We just read privacy policies and terms of service. And we actually have a robot that does that. And it just looks to a terms of service and it says, oh, email us at this address with an opt-out request and we'll take down whatever. And so our software does that automatically. And basically what it does is it compresses the amount of work that somebody would have to do to remove their information from the internet from a laborious process to basically just putting their information in and pressing a button. And this is valuable because we found that people have no patience to really achieve privacy on their own. Even if they have the instructions in front of them, people can't be bothered to take 10, 20, 30 minutes or to follow up on requests and to spend the time and energy it takes. And so a solution that automatically works is something that we found there's a demand for.
I have to say, I can't even believe that it's possible, because we do have this notion of things on the internet that they're just out there, and really it's the sense that it's so sprawling that you can't really, and they replicate and they multiply in different sites. So your information is appearing in all sorts of little nooks and crannies of the web, and how in the world are you going to find them? What's the key to finding them? Is it these gatekeepers of data collection, or is it something else?
Well, there are a number of gatekeepers. I mean, there's a lot of commercial enterprises that have the entire business model of collecting, aggregating information, and selling it. So if you can go to these large-scale databases and have your information removed, it really does decrease the spread of your information.
And they're okay with this? Like you approach them,
yeah,
or is that a negotiation?
They all generally have opt-out policies.
Okay.
It's a self-regulated industry for the most part, which is really interesting. There really has never been too much legislative intervention. And so the internet in a lot of ways is a wild west, for good and bad.
I feel like clearly congressmen aren't getting enough spam and unwanted stuff, because
right.
If they all were barraged with that, then there would be laws and regulation in this industry to help out.
Exactly. We should turn off the spam filters of all congressmen and see what happens.
I think that leads to change.
Yeah.
What about things like the Wayback Machine? I feel like for a while that was like this really convenient way, if you guys don't know it, it was a site you could go to and you could find, like I would look at earlier versions of Fast Company or something before we changed our website. It was great when sites would do redesigns because you could go back to the Wayback Machine and you could get a glimpse of it, a little time travel online.
Yeah, I mean, that really speaks to the fact that once something is on the internet, it's generally on the internet. And you're right, information does multiply, and once there's a record, it generally sticks. The Wayback Machine doesn't have anything that's in like a private network where you'd have to access it with login credentials. It doesn't have things that your average search engine crawler couldn't get to normally. That said, once information does come down from a site, it's far less accessible.
Well, it sounds like the data collecting companies are the ones that are really kind of propagating most of that information. So if you nip those in the bud, it's like there still may be things out there. You can't completely eliminate it, is that what you're saying? But at least it'll be a fractional compared to more pervasive.
Right. And what's interesting is, has anyone here ever gone to page like 50 of Google when searching for their own name or information? Like some of the stuff you come across, you had no idea was on the internet because it's really, really time consuming to go to page 50 and follow every single link and actually look at the page and what's on there and the content. But it's fascinating.
Well, and if you can limit your stuff to the 50th page or the 52nd page, then it's like, maybe it's pretty much hidden because no one's really going to go to the trouble of finding it there.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing you mentioned up front was it almost made me feel like we're complicit with with the problem, because you said, look, if you read the terms of service, and you kind of had me right there because I think I read maybe the first one, but then at some point I'm just checking the box, like download the software, let me have it, and you're not really sure what you're agreeing to.
Right, I mean, the terms we agree to every day, which is really how our information gets out there, are unbelievable. So John McAfee recently wrote a blog post where he said, imagine going and buying a microwave at Best Buy. Imagine now if Best Buy said, by buying this microwave, you give us access to your contact list, you allow us to send text messages on your behalf, you give us all of your profile information, you allow us to listen to your microphone and what's going into or out of it. You'd freak out. You would never buy the microwave in a million years. It would just be bizarre. But pretty much every website you sign up for or every app you download has terms similar to that. And we basically just gloss over the realities of what we're consenting to on a pretty much daily basis. And I even do it, and I'm an expert at privacy in some sense.
Well, then you become a customer. You're like the hair club guy. You become a customer for your own company because
Yeah.
you need them to go remove the information.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so what did you guys figure out? Like, what was the hard part? Like, I'm sure other companies were trying to solve this as well.
Yeah, we've learned a lot of lessons, and we figured a couple things out. The first is that people don't really want to put effort into privacy. A really good example of this is, I flew into Chicago this morning, and I was at San Francisco airport, and there was a security line, and there was 2 security machines. There was the old-fashioned one, metal detector, which we had for 30 years, and you walk through, and it was simple. And then there was the new XJ8000, Opti scan, where you have to put your hands up and it goes around you. And everybody was eyeing the old one like it was a juicy steak. Everyone was I could see everyone was oh, I want to go in that one. I hope he points me there and not to the Opti scan, 9000. And it was fascinating to me because everybody wanted that little extra amount of privacy where there's no record of it. They went through the metal detector with blank screen versus, my body image is in the cloud somewhere and some TSA agent sees me sort of naked. Everybody wanted, the old-fashioned metal detector. Everyone, was really excited to go through it. And if, you were to ask somebody, how much would you actually pay for the simple, basic, one that doesn't collect any information about you versus the OptiScan 9000, how much would you pay to go in the old metal detector? I would wager most people would pay 50 cents, 5 cents, 1 cent, free. But they don't value it tremendously. Nobody would say, I'll pay an extra $20 if United offered, privacy security.
I think here's what I think the airlines need to do. They need to have a self-data breach where they allow, or TSA, to allow those images out. And then when people see the images and they realize, oh my God, there's a naked scanned picture of me somewhere, then they could charge people $5 or $10 as they're going through it. There's business opportunity of the day right there, just throwing it out.
Yeah, if they show you that blobby photo, maybe. But the amount that someone would actually pay is very low. Everyone says they value it, and when it comes down to action, people will take the more private solution. So going back, one of the things we found is that privacy is something everyone wants and demands, but they're not willing to go very far to get it. It's the added bonus to go through the old-fashioned metal detector.
So who are your customers? Who uses it? Who wants to, pay for that service if they're not going to do it themselves to reduce their footprint online? We
find that the people willing to pay are the people who have a very, very, very strong idea of why they want privacy, and are willing to actually go out and get it. Our customers span the gamut from people who are just, strong libertarians to people who are, public officials to people who, have been a victim of some sort of stalking or abuse and just don't want their information to be public. We find it's people that have a very strong motivating factor. And that's when someone's willing to pay, a $100 membership per year for privacy. But generally, most people won't pay, and most people don't want to take the steps to actually achieve privacy on their own.
Okay, so how do you build a business around with the population that is oversharing and that maybe doesn't care and is kind of lazy, got to making us sound like a wonderful society. How do you build a business around offering a service to help correct all of that?
Well, it's tough. And it raises the question, is there a market for privacy to begin with? I get pitched on new companies all the time by people who are saying, hey, I want to start a business to sell personal data. And I'm like, oh, well, how much are you going to let someone sell their own data for? And they say, well, 15 cents. That's all that information is worth. And so if your information is only worth 15 cents, how much would you pay for it to stay private? What multiple of 15 cents? So it is difficult to build a business on this. And we're looking at different business models and different approaches to, build a billion-dollar enterprise. But it is a limited number of people who care enough.
Are you going to the search engines, like, companies whose claim is we find everything out there. You ask a question, we're scanning the internet to find everything relevant. Are you going to them and asking them to remove things too? I feel like for a while there was this movement hey, just contact Google and have them take it down.
Yeah, so search engines only index and publish what's already out there on the underlying primary site. So really the trick is to go to the primary sources, not the search engines. The search engines will, after a month or so, just de-index.
Right. How did you get into this?
I got into this accidentally, to be honest. I was on the internet late at night. It was, a Thursday, and there was a post on Reddit.com. I don't know if anyone reads Reddit. And it said, how to opt out of people search websites. And I looked at the process, and it was like, send a fax here and send snail mail here. And I said, whoa, software can automate all of this. Because I literally would rather spend 24 hours writing, code to automate the process of sending a fax than figuring out where is a fax machine, how do I go and actually use it.
Yeah, you're a coder. That's good. You talk about how fast it is now. How long would it take someone to go through all those steps as opposed to the automated software that's going to do it?
Well, I think it's out of reach for most consumers to do something like this manually at this point. The amount of searching that you'd have to do and monitoring the internet to know whether or not you're on the internet, what's exposed, is something that would take an inordinate amount of time. And then following up and submitting opt-out requests. It's just, I think for the most part, it's out of reach of consumers to try to attempt to be private on their own.
Is there, just in closing here, I'm curious, are there ones that that kind of, in a way, it's like you're an online detective, in a way, you're getting the software to go find things. Are there cases that still vex you because you weren't able to find and remove what somebody really wanted to pull back?
We preserve client confidentiality to an incredible degree.
Understood. Thanks for respecting my privacy on that. Okay.
We have had some incredibly interesting experiences.
That's it?
As I said, we really respect.
All right, you live it. I like the fact you're living the privacy line right there. Well, thanks so much for coming and talking to us.
Chuck, absolute pleasure.
All right, man.
Thank you.